The voicemail was still playing, her sister's voice, smooth as chilled vodka, filling the sterile hospital prep room where I sat in a paper gown, the cold air raising goosebumps on my skin. Ava, darling, we'd love to help, but it's just a terrible week. Dad has his golf tournament, and Mother's charity luncheon is simply unmissable. You understand, don't you? Maybe ask a friend. I understood. I understood as I clutched the edges of the gurney, my spine a fused column of agony. The scheduled spinal fusion surgery in 40 minutes. I understood as I looked at my phone, at the text from the last minute, ruinously expensive nanny I'd had to hire for my 5-year-old twins, Lily and Leo. But the understanding shattered an hour later, post-op, foggy with narcotics, when my lawyer friend Mia, her voice trembling with rage, called. Ava. I just saw the filings. The Granville Trust, it was dissolved last month. The entire inheritance from your grandfather, it's gone. Disbursed. The sole signatory was your sister. The money Grandpa Hall had left specifically for me, for his twins, held in trust until I was 40. A nest egg meant for their college, for security, for a life without the struggles he'd known. Gone, and then, the final blow. Scrolling through social media with a numb, clumsy thumb, a cascade of photos. My parents and my sister Elise, toasting with champagne at the Pierre, all smiles. That very afternoon, the caption from my mother, celebrating family legacy and new beginnings. So proud of my Elise for her visionary leadership at the foundation. The foundation. Our grandfather's charitable foundation, now her personal piggy bank. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was a surgical strike on my past, my present, my children's future, timed for the moment I was most helpless. The physical pain from the surgery was a dull throb next to the visceral tear of this truth. They left my children alone. They stole our future. They toasted to it. And that was the moment I knew the real revenge begins now. The rain in New York City, that November didn't fall so much as it descended. A perpetual, misting gloom that turned the neon signs of Midtown into shimmering smears of color on wet asphalt. From the high floor of my convalescent apartment, a temporary sublet paid for, by maxing out the last of my personal credit line, the city looked like a circuit board slowly shorting out. Each tiny taillight on the FDR drive was a pulse of data, a transaction, a secret. My own life felt like a secret now. A hollowed-out shell propped up by fury and a single, devastating file on my laptop. The audio recording. It had arrived anonymously a week after I left the hospital, a digital ghost in my encrypted inbox. No message, just a Granville G1014. Inside, the voices were crystalline, unmistakable. My father's weary baritone, Elise. Are you certain this is clean? The legalities. Elise's reply, a sound that had once meant comfort, now the scrape of a knife being whetted. It's already done. Daddy, the trustee was amenable. A generous consulting fee makes people see reason. Ava will never know until it's far too late to contest. She's distracted. Forever playing house with those children, always the victim. This money will do real work with the foundation. My mother's interjection, brittle and performative. We must think of the legacy, Robert, not sentiment. Elise has the vision to elevate the Granville name. Ava, well, she made her choices. And then the clincher, my sister, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial purr. The surgery is the perfect cover. She'll be incapacitated. Emotionally fragile. By the time she can even think straight, the funds will be irrevocably committed to the Montenegro project. If she cries poor, we simply say she's mismanaged what she had. People will believe it. They always believe the stronger narrative. I had listened to it 100 times. In the dead of night, with headphones clamped to my ears, the words etching themselves into the marrow of my bones. I played it while watching Lily and Leo sleep, their faces soft moons in the dim light, trusting and whole. They had asked about Grandpa and Grandma, about Aunt Elise. I told them they were on a long trip. The lie tasted like ash. My recovery was a slow, painful metamorphosis. The physical therapy was agony, each movement a reminder of my vulnerability. But it was fuel. As my spine knitted, so did my resolve, hardening into something cold, flexible and sharp. I stopped crying. I started planning revenge. I understood now wasn't a scream, it was a silence. It wasn't a bomb, it was a virus. And I had the perfect vector. Elise Granville. Wright was a masterpiece of curated power. Her world was a series of flawless, interconnected rooms. The corner office on the 60th floor, with a view that commanded the skyline. The penthouse on Central Park West, where every surface reflected a muted, expensive light, the boardrooms of museums and charities where her opinion was gospel. She was elegance weaponized, her blonde hair a sleek helmet, her clothes armor from designers, who understood the psychology of cut and cloth. She intimidated not by raising her voice, but by the exquisite arch of an eyebrow, by the chilling pause before a response. She had built the Granville Foundation into a social powerhouse, a glossy entity that hosted galas for climate change, while discreetly funding offshore holdings. The Montenegro project was her crowning ambition, a luxury eco-resort on protected coastline, a philanthropic development that required immense liquid capital, my capital. I began my own project. It required me to become a ghost in her machine. I used my old skills, from a career in architectural visualization I'd set aside for motherhood, to penetrate the foundation's digital periphery. I created a phantom identity, Maya Ross, a freelance sustainability consultant based in Copenhagen. I built a portfolio, a network of fake endorsements, a LinkedIn profile with AI-generated headshots. Over weeks, through a series of meticulously crafted emails, I had Maya approach the foundation, offering proprietary environmental impact data on the Montenegro coast, data that subtly, expertly, raised red flags about regulatory hurdles. Elise, ever thorough, ever paranoid about her pet project Bit. A video conference was scheduled, the day of the call. I sat in my dim apartment, the blinds drawn. I wore a black turtleneck, my dark hair pulled back, my face, thinner now, sharper, lit only by the blue glow of the monitor. The software altered my features, gave me a Scandinavian pallor, added a faint, pixelated blur. When Elise's face appeared on my screen, it was a jolt. She was in her office, the iconic geometry of the Chrysler Building framed behind her. She looked immaculate, invincible. "Ms. Ross," she said, her smile not reaching her eyes. "Thank you for your time. Your preliminary findings were intriguing. The coast is more fragile than your current assessments show," I said, my voice modulated by the software into a cool, accented alto. "There are geological surveys from the 1980s, buried in the National Archives, that indicate significant substrate instability. Building at the scale you propose could be catastrophic and politically untenable." I fed her lies threaded with truth, enough to trigger her defensive instincts. Her mask slipped, just for a fraction of a second. A flicker of irritation, of fear. The Montenegro project was her leverage to ascend to new boards, new circles. Its failure would be a public wound. "Our own experts have seen no such evidence," she countered, her voice smooth again. "But I'm always open to due diligence. Provided, of course, the source material is verified. Verification can be arranged," I said, "for a fee, and for discretion. I'm sure you understand. Projects like these, they attract certain eyes. The wrong kind of attention from journalists, or from disappointed family members with axes to grind." There it was. The subtlest tightening around her lips, a micro tick in her perfect jaw. She leaned forward, and the camera caught the hard glint in her eye. The one I remembered from childhood when she'd stolen a doll, and calmly watched me tear the house apart looking for it. "Family members," she echoed, her voice dangerously soft. "One hears things," I said vaguely, letting the silence stretch. "Inheritance disputes, sour grapes. It's none of my business. Of course, unless it becomes my business. I'm selling information, Ms. Granville, right? Not judgment." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes. A dance of veiled threats and professional blandishments. She agreed, reluctantly, to a further data review for a substantial sum, transferred to an offshore account I'd set up. But the hook was set. I had seen the crack. I had made her think her house was being watched from the outside. The next phase required getting inside. The Foundation's annual winter gala, was the pinnacle of Elise's social calendar. 1,000 of the city's wealthy and powerful, draped in black tie and diamonds, swirling under the vaulted ceiling of the New York Public Library. Security was a discreet, impenetrable wall. I couldn't go as Ava. Ava was broken, recovering poor, but I could go as staff. With a modest bribe to a harried staffing agency manager, I became Clara, a last-minute replacement banquet server. The night of the gala, I stood in a starched white shirt and black vest, my hair pinned under a cap, a tray of champagne flutes in my hands, a ghost among the living. The spectacle was nauseatingly beautiful. Ice sculptures melted slowly, a string quartet played Vivaldi, the air smelled of gardenias, champagne and money. And there she was, my sister, in a column of liquid silver, holding court near the Astor Hall staircase. My parents flanked her like proud gargoyles. My father looked older, shrunken inside his tuxedo. My mother's smile was a brittle mannequin's grin. They were accessories to her triumph. I moved through the crowd, invisible, a vessel for alcohol and canapes. I listened. I heard the whispers about the brilliant Montenegro deal, the praise for Elise's vision. I saw the way men deferred to her, the way women envied her. It was a cathedral built on my ruin. My moment came during a lull. Elise broke away, heading for a private anteroom off the main hall, a leather-clad sanctuary for VIs. She was followed by a man I recognized, David Chen, a city zoning official with a reputation for flexible ethics. The door clicked shut. A service entrance, hidden behind a tapestry, led to a pantry that shared a wall with that room. I slipped in, heart hammering against my ribs. The old building had ventilation grates, and sound carried. I pressed my ear to the cold metal. "The variance is the final piece, David," Elise was saying, her voice muffled but clear. "Without it, groundbreaking is delayed 6 months. The investors get nervous. The environmental review is problematic, Elise," Chen replied, a wheedling tone in his voice. "My people are asking questions. The data from your team seems to conflict with some older surveys. The older surveys are obsolete. We have contemporary independent analysis." A lie delivered with utter conviction. "The foundation is prepared to make a significant grant to the city's waterfront revitalization fund. $1 million. Anonymous, of course. Consider it a gesture of shared commitment to progress." A long pause. The clink of ice in a glass. $1.5 million. And I need cover. A paper trail from a third-party NGO. Something clean. Agreed. No hesitation. The funds will be routed through the Cayman Holding Company. Same as the trustee payment. Seamless. I stopped breathing. The trustee payment. She had just, on tape courtesy of my phone pressed against the grate, admitted to a second bribe, and connected it to the theft of my trust. It was the missing link, the thread that tied her white-collar crime to the raw, personal betrayal. I had it. The audio was shaky, ambient noise from the gala, a faint chorus behind it, but their voices were unmistakable. I slid away, back into the throng, the phone burning a hole in my apron pocket. The following weeks were a silent siege. I used Maya Ross to feed Elise more disturbing, but fabricated, information about Montenegrin environmental activists preparing a lawsuit. I watched as the pressure began to tell. Sightings of her in the society pages showed a woman still poised, but with a new tautness to her smile. My anonymous tip to a dogged financial reporter at the Wall Street Journal about irregularities in charitable foundation fund allocations sparked a quiet, preliminary inquiry. I could feel the walls of her perfect world beginning to vibrate. The climax needed to be personal. It needed an audience. I chose my parents' 40th wedding anniversary party, a lavish affair at their country club in Westchester. They had not called me. Not once since my surgery. The invitation to the party had been a generic, printed card, addressed to Ava and family, an afterthought. I RSVP'd yes. I arrived alone. The twins safely with Mia. I wore a simple, severe black dress. I had lost weight, the dress hung on me, making me look like a shard of darkness. The party was a parody of suburban opulence, string lights, a band playing soft jazz, my parents moving stiffly through a crowd of their peers. Elise was resplendent in burgundy silk, the gracious daughter. When she saw me, her stride faltered for only a second before she advanced, a predator's smile on her lips. Ava, you came. How brave. Her eyes scanned me, taking in my thinness, my lack of jewelry. You look tired. Are the children well? They're magnificent, I said, my voice calm, carrying. A few heads turned. They ask about their grandparents. I tell them you're all very, very busy. Her smile tightened. We are. The foundation is at a critical juncture. We're changing the world, you know. Not just playing in it. I know all about the Montenegro project, Elise. I kept my voice conversational. And the Granville Trust. And the amiable trustee. All color drained from her face, leaving 2 spots of blush on her cheeks like fever marks. She stepped closer, her perfume suddenly cloying. You don't know what you're talking about. You're unwell, Ava. Bitter. Maybe the surgery, the painkillers. No pills, I said. Just clarity. I glanced over at our parents, who were watching us now with nervous eyes. They look proud of you. Do they know how you paid for their pride? How you stole from their other grandchild's future to buy it? You have no proof of anything. She hissed, her composure cracking, revealing the raw, furious creature beneath. I have a recording, I said softly. Of you and Dad and Mom, in your office, planning the theft while I was being prepped for surgery. I have another of you bribing David Chen, and mentioning the trustee payment in the same breath. The journal reporter is very interested. Her elegant hand shot out and gripped my wrist, her nails digging in. You little fool. You think you can threaten me? I will destroy you. I will take those children from you. I will say you're insane, unfit, a drug-addled liar. This was the moment, the precipice. I looked past her, to my parents, who were hurrying over, their faces masks of concern, for their reputation, not for me. The band had stopped playing. A circle of silence had formed around us. Mom, Dad, I said, my voice ringing out in the quiet. You remember the day of my surgery? When you refused to watch Lily and Leo? When you were too busy with Elise's vision? My mother's hand fluttered to her throat. Ava, not here, for God's sake. I have a question, I continued, pulling a small, sleek Bluetooth speaker from my clutch. What did you talk about that afternoon, after you sent me that voicemail? Was it the golf tournament? The luncheon, or was it the $6.2 million in the Granville Trust? My father's face turned to slate. Stop this. Elise lunged for the speaker. I was faster, I hit play. Their voices, clear as crystal, filled the hushed country club patio. Elise, are you certain this is clean? The legalities. It's already done, Daddy. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Friends, neighbors, colleagues listened, rapt, as my family's conspiracy unfolded in their own words. I watched my parents' faces. The confusion, the dawning horror, the sheer, catastrophic shame as they heard their own voices, plotting against their daughter and grandchildren. This was the true revenge, not just the exposure of the crime, but the evisceration of their carefully constructed selves. They were not powerful matriarch and patriarch. They were cowards and thieves, exposed before their entire world. But Elise's face, hers, was the masterpiece. The elegant mask disintegrated into pure, undiluted hatred, then crumpled into a terrifying vulnerability. She looked like a lost, vicious child caught in a terrible act. The recording ended with her cold, pragmatic words. If she cries poor, we simply say she's mismanaged what she had. People will believe it. In the dead silence that followed, I looked at the three of them. A broken triangle of guilt and rage. People, I said quietly, will believe what they just heard. I turned and walked away, through the parted crowd. Across the manicured lawn, into the cool night. I didn't look back. The fallout was swift and merciless. The journal story ran, amplified 1,000-fold by the scandalous audio from the gala. The Montenegro project collapsed. The foundation was placed under receivership. David Chen and the pliable trustee were indicted. My parents, socially obliterated, retreated to a silent, shame-filled exile in Florida. The civil suit was a formality. Faced with criminal exposure for fraud and conspiracy, Elise settled. Every penny, with interest, was returned to a new, ironclad trust for Lily and Leo. I bought a small, sun-filled house upstate, with a yard for the kids to run in. Months later, a plain envelope arrived. With no return address. Inside was a single high-gloss photograph from the society pages, taken the day of my surgery. My parents and Elise, glasses raised, smiling at the Pierre. On the back, in my sister's precise, furious handwriting, was scrawled, "You win." I looked at it for a long time, then dropped it into the fireplace. The flames took it greedily, curling the paper, melting the smile, turning the triumph to ash. Revenge, I had learned, was not a victory. It was a reclamation. It was the silence after the storm, the quiet space where you finally get to hear your own breath again. And know, with a bone, deep certainty, that the next story written will be your own.